Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Lowest Crime, a podcast about the most notorious true crime cases from the Netherlands. I am Eline, and today we'll dive into the heartbreaking and just awful case of Rowena Rikkers, also known as the girl from Nulde. Ask any Dutch person and they most likely will have heard of the case. Mostly because it was so extensively covered by the media due to its gruesome details. Before we start, please be advised that today's episode contains details of violence, dismemberment, and child abuse that some listeners may find disturbing. And although I try my very best to bring you all the known facts, I am just an amateur podcast creator, and there is always a chance of me making a mistake. So, let's dive in. It was a sunny day on August 27th, 2001, when beachgoers at Nulde Beach made a horrific discovery. Floating in the water near the parking lot was the torso of a young girl. The tiny body, missing its limbs and head, was a traumatic sight. Police initially estimated the girl to be between 5 and 7 years old. And despite the advanced decomposition, there were no signs of sexual abuse. To avoid causing widespread panic, the police initially kept the grimmest details to themselves. By the end of the day, about 100 officers were combing the area, checking nearby asylum seeker centers and campgrounds. Helicopters flew overhead, photographing the area, while divers searched the waters. The discovery was deeply unsettling, and the police were determined to find answers. 2 days later, on August 29th, the police revealed the full extent of the horror. The body had been dismembered. This gruesome detail shocked the public and intensified the investigation. And just when it seemed things just couldn't get worse, on September 2nd, a fisherman discovered a child's head in the Nieuwe Waterweg, Hoek van Holland, far from Nulde Beach. The head was severely mutilated, with the hair and facial features intentionally removed to hinder identification. Later, DNA tests confirmed that it was the same girl. The forensic team considered the possibility that the perpetrator had deliberately scattered the body parts to hinder identification and investigation. With no immediate leads and no missing children reports matching the description, the police faced a daunting task. To help identify the girl, Caroline Wilkinson, a renowned forensic artist from the UK, was brought in to create a facial reconstruction from the skull, a meticulous and painstaking process that would hopefully provide clues about the girl's identity. Using the skull as a base, Wilkinson carefully applied layers of clay to recreate the child's face. This process involved great anatomical knowledge and artistic skill to ensure the accuracy of the reconstruction. Every detail, from the width of the nose to the spacing of the eyes, was crafted with precision. Wilkinson's efforts culminated in a lifelike clay model of the young girl's face, with a distinctive gap between the front teeth and a broad nose, which was then shared with the media in hopes that someone would recognize her. The media played a crucial role in spreading the word about the reconstruction. The image was shown on television and printed in newspapers across the country, generating hundreds of tips. One of the most promising leads came from a school in Dordrecht, recognizing the reconstruction as Rowena Rikkers, a 4-year-old girl last seen in Dordrecht. Rowena Rikkers was born on August 30th, 1996, in Dordrecht. Rowena's early life seemed ordinary, growing up with her younger sister, Rochelle, and her parents, Wanda Rikkers and Martin Huisman. However, the family dynamic changed dramatically when Wanda and Martin separated in April of 2001. Wanda soon entered into a relationship with Mike J., moving in with him in Rotterdam and bringing her daughters along. Mike J. quickly took control of the household, imposing strict and often violent discipline, particularly targeting Rowena. He later revealed to the police that he had been abused by his stepfather, continuing a tragic cycle of violence. Rowena's life took a turn for the worse, as Mike's presence became increasingly oppressive. Neighbors rarely saw the girls, and Rowena's vibrant energy began to fade, replaced by fear and submission. Reports later surfaced that she was often seen with bruises and was described as withdrawn. Despite the dire situation, Rowena continued to display moments of resilience and innocence. Friends and relatives remembered her as a sweet and playful child who loved drawing and playing with her sister. However, these moments of normalcy were increasingly overshadowed by the escalating abuse at the hands of Mike J. Rowena and her sister Rochelle had to sleep together on one mattress on the floor and were constantly terrorized by Mike. He treated Rowena with extreme cruelty, including locking her in a dog cage as a form of punishment, subjecting her to fully clothed cold showers, as well as forcing her to remain upright in bed without sleeping. The abuse left her physically and emotionally exhausted. On August 15th, 2001, the violence reached a devastating climax. After enduring prolonged abuse, Rowena succumbed to her injuries at the hands of Mike. Mike continuously changed his story, but ultimately he admitted to kicking Rowena. But at the same time he claimed it was an accident. He says that the next morning he found her unresponsive and panicked. But instead of seeking medical help, he decided to cover up the incident. According to police statements, however, Mike had tried to resuscitate Rowena when she collapsed from her injuries. But when that failed, he put her body in a freezer. Later, he sawed off her head, hands, arms, feet, and legs, and he did everything possible to make Rowena unrecognizable. Shaving her head, removing her nose and ears, gouging out her eyes, and cutting away her lips to access her teeth. This so he could remove the distinctive front teeth with the gap that had ultimately helped identify her in the end. Mike's actions following Rowena's death were calculated and cold-blooded. After dismembering her, he scattered her remains in an attempt to hinder identification and cover up the crime. And this is when her torso was found at Nulde Beach, after which her head was found in the Nieuwe Waterweg, Hoek van Holland. The meticulous and gruesome nature of these actions highlighted the depravity of the abuse she suffered. The autopsy of Rowena's body revealed extensive injuries, consistent with prolonged abuse. Her body showed signs of repeated physical trauma, including bruises, fractures, and signs of strangulation. The pathologist noted that while the exact cause of death was hard to pinpoint due to the state of decomposition, it was clear that the abuse had been fatal. In October, after examination and identification of Rowena's body and head, her hand was discovered in the Veluwemeer near Harderwijk, further emphasizing the horrific nature of the crime. Both Mike and Wanda were arrested in Spain in December and extradited to the Netherlands. Rowena's sister, Rochelle, was luckily found safe and sound and brought back to the Netherlands as well, and placed into foster care. Wanda and Mike were subjected to intensive police interrogations. Their stories shifted often, but eventually they both confessed to their involvement in Rowena's death. In 2003, Mike J. was sentenced for manslaughter and received a 12-year prison sentence, along with a compulsory psychiatric treatment, TBS, which he started in 2009. Wanda Rikkers, Rowena's mother, was convicted for her passive role in the abuse and murder. She failed to intervene or report her daughter's abuse and disappearance, leading to an 8-year prison sentence. She served 3 years and was released in 2006, now living under a new identity and with a new family. The trial revealed the horrifying details of Rowena's last days. Testimonies described how she was regularly beaten, sometimes with a pot scraper, and often left to stand under a cold shower for long periods of time, as well as being locked in a dog cage. The defense teams for both Mike and Wanda tried to shift the blame. Mike's lawyer claimed that Wanda was equally responsible and that Mike's harsh upbringing influenced his actions. Wanda's defense argued that she was under Mike's control and feared for her own safety if she intervened. Despite these arguments, the court found them both guilty, though Mike received a harsher sentence due to his direct physical abuse. Mike J's defense lawyer, P. van der Donk, also suggested that Rowena may not have died from the abuse, but from a combination of a virus, herpes simplex, and anemia. He argued that the virus could have weakened her immune system and led to meningitis, but the court did not accept this argument. Mike J. also denied dismembering Rowena's body. He claimed in court that somebody else did it at his request, although he refused to say who had mutilated Rowena's body, deflecting with vague statements like, "There are people for that in every industry," and "I also wonder how the drugs get into the Netherlands." The psychological evaluations painted a disturbing picture. Mike's evaluation revealed a complex and deeply troubled individual. Diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and paranoia, Mike exhibited traits of manipulation, lack of empathy, and aggressive behavior. Wanda, while also found responsible, was portrayed as a woman under Mike's dominant control. She was found to have a dependent personality disorder, making her highly susceptible to Mike's control. Rowena's younger sister, Rochelle, who witnessed much of the abuse, has been deeply affected, but is managing to cope with support. Martin Huisman, Rowena's father, fought a long and difficult battle for custody of Rochelle. Initially placed into foster care, Rochelle eventually returned to her father, though the trauma of her early years left deep scars. Losing her sister and the subsequent legal proceedings had a profound impact on her psychological well-being. Martin and Rochelle have since worked to rebuild their lives, though the pain of losing Rowena remains ever present. Martin was also severely impacted by the events. Recently, he received a message from victim support indicating that Mike J. would be granted unsupervised leave starting January 2nd. This news reignited Martin's feelings of anger, grief, and frustration. He finds it incomprehensible that Mike J. is receiving such privileges, while Martin feels abandoned by the system. One of the reasons being that he keeps being denied the right to speak at Mike's hearings about the extension of his TBS. Mike J. has been residing in the Royse Wissel TBS clinic in Venray, where he initially showed stable behavior, leading to the first recommendation of just a 1-year extension of his TBS. However, due to a recent turbulent period, the prosecutor, advised by the clinic, now recommends extending his TBS by 2 years. Mike J. has been experiencing physical health issues requiring heavy medication, and contradictory as it may seem after the acts he has committed, he has expressed feeling anxious about facing Rowena's family in court. Rowena's story serves as a tragic reminder of children's vulnerability and the consequences of domestic abuse. Rowena's case led to significant reforms in child protection laws in the Netherlands, including stricter reporting policies, harsher penalties for offenders, and mandatory reporting for professionals. Public awareness campaigns were launched to prevent child abuse and support victims, educating the public on recognizing and reporting abuse. Schools and communities also implemented programs to teach children about their rights and how to seek help. The case also highlighted the importance of early intervention in child abuse cases, which could have saved her life. It also emphasizes the need for better communication and coordination among child protection agencies. But even with these changes in legislation, ongoing challenges highlight the necessity for sustained efforts and improvements in child protection, so we can all help and prevent these tragedies from happening in the future. Thank you all so much for joining me through this tragic story. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And also don't forget to follow the podcast on Instagram to get all images related to the case. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.